You might have YouTube on.
Wow, good afternoon, everybody. It's so wonderful to have so many of you on this webinar this afternoon. My name is Marie-Claire Ross, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm a bit weird. I have two names for my first name, Marie-Claire, and I'm from Trustology, and I'm so excited to be sharing with you some of this information this afternoon. So just to give a little bit of a before we launch into everything, I thought I'd just share how this is going to work. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to get you to interact as much as you can. So you'll see at the bottom of your screen, if you don't know Zoom, and I'm sure most of you do, but there's a chat button. There's a chat button and a Q&A button. So as I'm going along, feel free to write any thoughts that are coming into your head or any experiences in the chat button. And when you have a question, feel free to write it in the Q&A as I'm going along, and I'll be able to get to it at the end of the session. And there will be some times throughout the webinar today where you'll get to express your opinion. So I really recommend that you interact and share your experiences. And so I'll get you to type things in a chat box or unmute yourself and talk about what it is that you want to talk about. So what we're going to cover today is how health and safety requirements have changed. So if you are in safety or HR or change and communications, how you talk to your employees has actually shifted since the pandemic. And we're going to talk about that. And I'm also going to touch base with a program that I have to help with that as well. So I just want to go back a little bit in time. So for quite a few years, for 12 years, I was running a video communication house called Digicast Productions, where we would produce safety induction and training videos. And with that, one of the things that I loved to do was actually go on site, and with my production team, we would film people doing processes and procedures. And many years ago, there was one of the things that I loved about this was when we would get on site, you could actually visibly see it lift morale. People would be really excited to see us because they could see that the organisation cared about them and that they were spending money to create really high quality training videos. And everything changed for me when I was working for this large glass manufacturer. And when we got on site, people weren't as excited to see us as they normally were. And there was very much this us versus them language. And people didn't seem to like their supervisors, let alone the leaders, when I was working with those on the front line. And that was highly unusual because I knew that the people at the top levels were really concerned about their staff and wanted to keep them safe from glass injuries. And I'd been working with the executive general manager, the training manager, the production manager, the safety manager, every single manager you could imagine. And I knew they really cared. And we found that the people on the front line were just a little bit difficult to work with than we were normally used to. And a couple of weeks after we left, they went on strike. And I swear it was nothing that we had done. And when the EGM actually launched the manual handling training program across Australia and New Zealand, we were told that some employees were actually grabbing their little employee handbooks and chucking them in the bin. And I was actually asked, well, why is this happening? And at the time, I was doing the Workplace Communicator blog and writing safety communication articles all the time. And some of you I know have read a lot of those articles. And I was doing a lot of research into supervisors because I was creating a training program for communication techniques for toolbox dogs. And I said, well, we haven't got the supervisors involved. We didn't get their buy-in, and they haven't got the buy-in of the front line. So all we're doing is it just feels to them like it's another thing being done to them, not for them, another imposition from leadership. And I realised that we'd missed out on this amazing opportunity to improve industrial relations, but we'd missed out on that opportunity. Now, the program worked really well. We decreased manual handling injuries by 45% in that first year, and the organisation got a return on their investment of at least 923%. But it just got me, and I realised that this was something that needed to be leveraged. So a few years ago, I started another business, Trustology, and it was designed to help create high trust cultures through humanized communication and leadership behaviors. And I truly believe that safety sets the tone for how much people believe that leaders care for them and each other. And caring is a keystone habit that we need to build high trust, safe cultures. And if you're wondering what a keystone habit is, which is what caring does in an organisation, it's a habit that when you focus on that, it improves a whole lot of behaviours. So today, I'm going to take you through how caring is often the missing link in health and sustainability and environmental programs, and it really makes the biggest difference. And so I just should warn you, I know that I've got a variety of people on this webinar today, comms people, HR people, change people, safety people. Now, when I say safety, just insert the area that you're working on because it kind of links with all. So let's go into what's been happening in the world. So we all know that, the pandemic hit and things changed pretty rapidly. And COVID-19 has been a game changer, and it has been one of the biggest health and safety messages any company has had to deliver. And what companies had to do really quickly was create timely, relevant, consistent information to help employees understand what they need to do, but how the organization intended to keep them safe. And what's really interesting is that many companies have done a fabulous job at this. In fact, there is the Edelman Trust Barometer, which is done every year, that measures trust in organisations in terms of government and not-for-profits and the media and the community and all sorts of different areas. They did a special one after the pandemic hit. And what they found was that employees are more likely to trust the communication on COVID from their employer at 63%, compared to 51% for traditional media and 53% for government. And because of this, employees actually expect more from businesses. 78% expect organisations to protect employees and the community. Now, you're probably wondering, well, what has this got to do with health and safety? Well, it's actually got everything to do with health and safety, because responding to the pandemic has actually required clear, thoughtful, relevant communication. And it really has required that companies have been soothing their anxious workforce through really giving them messages about how to improve their well-being and their mental health. And this really is such a shift. And during this pandemic, I've actually been kind of really lucky to be able to do some work with Petronas, which is a big oil and gas company in Malaysia. Now, I got to do 30 stakeholder interviews with those, working on oil rigs, right through to those in the leadership team at their Kuala Lumpur office. And what was really interesting is there is this underlining theme that it's no longer about safety on the shop floor, that there really is this transition and this shift where people are seeing the health and safety department as being a valued partner that cares about people's health and well-being. And this is so different to what we've had before. So for those of you who've been in health and safety for such a long time, this really is your moment. People are finally valuing the work that you do. And what this means is that because now people are seeing health and safety differently, they've got different expectations. So this is this really wonderful time to really continue and elevate your positioning, really harness it, which means actually taking from the past and even from the present what you're doing really well, but looking to the future and where you need to go and what the new expectations are and being able to deliver on that. And at its core, this really does require humanizing the workplace and really demonstrating to people that you care about them and the workplace, that the leaders care about them as well. Now, I know that many of you have felt so lonely over the last few years. You've probably felt like you've been banging your head against a wall because people have probably told you, oh, that won't happen to me, or I don't have time. And if you're in HR and you've been pushing health and wellbeing, you've had to come up against people telling you that, oh, I'm not going to burn out, my diet's fine. And it's been really hard. So this webinar is for you if you felt really lonely and that you've been trying to send out this message of caring and being worried about people, but people have resisted what you've tried to say. Because there really has been this issue where you've had to come up against this almost like a fight between production and the time it takes to do things and people thinking, well, compliance will slow me down. But of course, it's not about compliance. It's about moving from compliance to care and helping leaders understand that it's really about protecting their employees and not putting them into situations that they're going to be at risk. Now, creating a mentally and physically healthy workplace really does require company and leadership communication that really touches three different areas. Now, I use this model in the workshops that I do, and these are three areas based on neuroscience that the brain really needs to feel safe and secure in uncertain situations. And when we have this, it creates trust. And what the brain does is constantly asking these questions, every few seconds. And one of these is to do with psychological safety and emotional safety. Is it safe to be myself? Can I take a risk, make a mistake, or are people going to, tell me off and hurt me? Then the next one is, do I belong? Am I connected to the people here? Do they value my contribution? And then the final one, which sometimes gets missed in communication, is, do we share a future? Is there a future for this company? Is there a future for safety? Are they trying to keep people safe? Now, when we actually create messages that touch on these three areas, it really helps people trust the environment and the company that they work for. And this is important because this is where we start to bridge the gap between leadership and those on the front line to really demonstrate that the organisation cares about people. And this is what was missing in the example that I gave you before. And this is what we needed to do to smooth over those industrial relations. Now, of course, getting your health and safety messages has been a tough call to get right, because you have to come up against all sorts of things. HSE changes all the time. There's so many different government updates and regulations. You've got new employees coming in, you've got younger workers, and a lot of the messages don't inspire action. One of the things I find is a lot of organisations don't focus so much on getting action. And then you've got to compete with speed and production pressures and those mindsets and beliefs that really work against what you're trying to do. Safety is someone else's responsibility. So I'm really interested in what you guys have been finding. So just want you to chat, just type in the chat box. What is the biggest problem that you find with your health and safety communication? What are the blocks, the challenges that you're coming up against? So feel free just to type in the chat box what it is that you're finding. Okay, so Naseem, thank you, Naseem. You say that you do feel that caring is the missing link with comms. You come up against it in cultures that dismiss it as fluff. Yep, that's so true. How do I convince my colleagues? We're going to get through that. Thank you. Heather, hello, Heather. Employees are inundated with information. Yes, that is really, really hard. Cutting through that noise can be really difficult. Kirsten, hello, Kirsten. Exactly as you're saying, time versus production, more about compliance than caring for managers. Yeah, really important. Nicolette, hello, Nicolette, how are you? Tokenism, oh, wow, tokenism, great word. Around safety is our number one priority, which is more damaging than helpful. Yes, that is so true. Ricky, hello, Ricky. Enterprise agreements and entitlements. Yep, that's really tough to navigate through. Keith appears compliance-based, not human-focused. Yep, that's really true. Leaders, hello, Andrew. Leaders that don't always walk the talk and see WHS as additional activity. Yeah, that's something that I know you've all had to struggle with over the years. Liz, comms can get lost in the inbox, not given a priority. WHS is to cover bosses. Yeah, it's so true. Thanks, Brian. Alistair, hello, Alistair. Some of the controls are over the top relative to the risk. Yeah, that's a big thing, particularly in Australia. Wayne, been doing this for years with no injury. Oh, yeah, that complacency, it's really hard. Brad, catering for diversity of services in large orgs makes it meaningful. Yeah, that is hard, and I'm going to touch on that later. Jackie, hello, Jackie. Controlling the number of messages to keep up with changes, notices, getting the detail out there without overwhelming with too many messages. Yep. Oh, wow, you guys are really coming up with thoughts. Oh, hello, Campbell. I struggle with understanding what and how often people wish to receive comms as opposed to consultation. Yeah, great. Okay, you guys are rolling with this, which is great because I'm going to cover a lot of what you've just mentioned. So this is really cool. Okay, so, just Nicolette. Anything to do with zero harm, which implies we don't value Genuine safety. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, we'll keep moving along. So, actually, I've got a question for you. Just type in the chat box what you think is the primary objective for a safety or well-being or sustainability program. Does anyone want to have a go at what they think the objective is? Anyone brave enough? Anyone want to have a little go? What is the primary objective when you've got a safety, well-being, sustainability program? Delivering safety improvement outcome. Yep. Staff go home healthy and safe every night. And in 20 years from now, oh yeah, really good one. Cool. So it really at the core, thanks Kirsten, is to change behaviours so that people are in alignment with your safety culture. But often this gets forgotten about in the quest to get a message out. So I want to take you through a maturity model for communications because the effectiveness of safety communication actually follows the safety maturity of an organisation. So if you want to shape your safety culture, there are things that you must achieve with your comms to get your culture to the next level. So with this model here, you can see that on the left, we have an arrow from low to high. So the research shows that you're more likely to have a really high performance safety culture when people can really see evidence that the company puts safety as a priority. But when that priority isn't very clear, you get reactive communication. So reactive communication is what a lot of organizations send out when they haven't really started working on their safety culture. So this is really for a lot of small businesses, mid-sized companies, or those that might be really dysfunctional that are quite large. So this is often a negative response that conveys that people are the problem. And it puts people in fear, resulting in people more likely to ignore the communication. And this is really when the communication does more damage than good. So what people really need is consistent communication linked to your safety strategy that demonstrates that the organisation cares about employees and that they know that there is a roadmap and a forward path. You know, that's that meaningful future I touched on before. So when communication is created that assumes people are doing the wrong thing, what people do is they think, well, that's not for me, that's for someone else because I'm doing the wrong thing. So it's really hard to get any sort of behavioural change. In fact, you have to do 10 times the effort of humanised communication right at the top there. But this communication is seen as irrelevant. Now, this type of communication is what you tend to do if you're a parent. So if you're a parent, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you're not a parent, just remember when you were a kid. So say, for example, you're tired, you've got things on your mind, it's the end of the day, you're watching your favourite TV show, The Block, and you can hear your two teenage children, fighting upstairs, and you can hear them bashing the bejesuses out of each other. And then they come down and they say, oh, it's blah, blah's fault, it's blah, blah's fault. And you just go, Bart, you know, what did you do? And Bart goes, it's not Bart, it's Lisa. And you think, no, it's not Lisa. Lisa's the good child. But because you've assumed, because you've gone into that habit, you've upset Bart. And Bart says, that's it, I'm leaving home, I'm packing my bags, you don't love me, blah, 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 blah. And so we've done that reactive thing where we go into those habits. We say the things our parents said. And school teachers, oh my gosh, school teachers really good at reactive communication. So all it does is it puts people off. They don't really listen to you because you're not really listening to them. And then the next level is compliant communication. Now, I see a lot of companies fall into this trap, even when they're doing lots of proactive and humanized stuff, when they're doing standard operating procedures. And this is where you're putting people into that compliance coma. It's where that communication that's very corporate speak, usually written by safety risk professionals, and it's really written to cover people's asses. It's not written to help people. It's not written to actually help people do the right thing. And this is based on that common misperception that awareness building is equal to communication. Yet information doesn't produce awareness. Now, in my book, Transform Your Safety Communication, I actually mentioned that you have to get out messages at least 4 to 6 times in different ways and different methods to actually get people to even remember it. So the problem is, and some of you touched on this before in the comments, that people are drowning in information but starving for wisdom. And this really is your role moving forward. So when communication smacks of protecting people's asses and it's complicated and procedural, people really do resist it. And in fact, they defy against it and will even deliberately do the wrong thing. Now, my example for this is actually, for those of you, you probably know this show, but for those of you in Australia, but for those of you who aren't, there's this show that's on television at the moment called The Block, and it involves 5 couples renovating a house each, and they're under all this enormous time pressure and cost pressure to get things done. Now, these are the 2 foremen, and Keith, well, let's just say he's the grumpy, old, compliance-based foreman, and he gets very upset when people disrespect his authority. And so a common example is there's a couple, they're under pressure, and they get something done without him checking it first. Now, I will say, of course, it's very important things are audited and checked and compliant. But what he does is that he makes it a point when they forget to check in with him that they have to pull out whatever it is that they've done without his permission. And of course, he finds some terrible fault that would have made the house fall down. But rather than care about their perspective or what they're going through, he just makes it about how he's right and they're wrong. And what the research actually shows us is that when you have caring supervisors, you actually create ethical behavior that reduces the need for a lengthy set of rules. So it's sort of counterintuitive. We think that we need to control people with rules, but the more we do, the more it shows distrust. And there are lots of studies that actually show this. So there was a big study and they looked at 32,000 employees, and they actually found that 67% of employees are more engaged when they have leaders that actually care about them than those who don't. And then another study, now this kind of will blow your mind, is that 33% of employees who were treated in an uncaring manner intentionally reduce the quality of their work. So, of course, we don't want to do communication like that or have supervisors like that. Now, to get to the next level, proactive comms, this is really when we start getting into a sweet spot and where we start tipping into more safety, ownership, and accountability. And this is where we are really creating proactive communication that really helps people understand what they need to do. And this is where it's consistent and it's hopefully connected to your safety strategy. Now, where I find there are a couple of issues here is that it's usually not emotionally based content and what's connected to what's in it for me. And there needs to be a little bit more consultation with what people need and more leadership aids. But if you are at this level, this is where people are more likely to consider the information. And this is where you start to get influence. And it's much easier to get behavioral impact. And then we head into the best zone, which is the humanized communication zone. Now, this is where you help employees really connect why safety matters and what they need to do. And they can see that safety is really core to leadership and how the business works. But it provides this beautiful sense of community, which is so important for our mental health and well-being, particularly at this time. And this is where change happens. We don't change that well on our own, but we change when we are embedded in supportive groups. And this is where people have that shared mental model of what safety is about, particularly to your culture. And this is where you start to get action. And this is really where you put yourself into that positioning of being that trusted advisor and integrator. It's where people feel understood. It's where people know that decisions are being made that consider them. And this is where you really have that emotional content that hits the right triggers, that gets the safety culture really moving in the right direction and sustaining it. Because for a lot of you, you launch a safety program, it works for a little while, and then you have trouble, it gets stalled and it's hard to continue the momentum. So I just want to give you an example of some humanized communication. And this example is actually from Petronas that I have done some work with. And I love this one that they've done. And you can see the headline, and that this was sent out as an email. And it says, "Stuck in a toxic work environment, unreasonable bosses, uncooperative staff, or backbiting colleagues making you dread work each day. Do you find yourself taking MC just to avoid working?" Now, MC means sick leave. It gets me because that's my nickname, but no, it means sick leave. I love this because it's not avoiding or ignoring the fact that, sometimes we have bosses or people around us that just aren't that nice. And when you've got 50,000 employees, there are, of course, going to be some toxic work environments. But the beautiful thing is they're giving mental well-being advice for people in that situation. And it's really grabbing. And they've done a really good job of taking the frameworks that I've given them to write that emotionally compelling information. So So when it comes to this model, I actually want you to think about where you are. So where do you think your communication lies predominantly now? And, what value do you think would be to your organization if you had more humanized communication? So just type in the chat box, your thoughts on this. Where do you think you are? What would be the value if you moved from, say, proactive to humanized, or from compliance to proactive? Just type in your thoughts and share your experience. If you've got anyone that would like to share. Casey, you're at the compliance stage. Yeah, moving into proactive right now. And a lot of you're probably finding that you're doing that naturally because that's what your employees are really wanting. And this is very much what I'm hearing time and time again when I actually speak to employees about what they want from their health and safety communication. A mixture? Yeah. Yeah, that's right, Alistair. Mostly communication is compliant to getting it to proactive. So yeah, it's a journey, and we can often fall into those habits. When we start just blaming Bart, we just go into that habitual communication. It can be really hard to shift those habits and routines. The different language. Still balancing budgets, targets. Yeah, that's really hard too, Ricky. And so what sort of value do you think it would have to your organisation to get into that more humanised communication space? In fact, if anyone wants to unmute themselves and share, you're welcome to do that as well. Anyone want to have a chat? Okay. KC, so the company will be safer, and I believe more incidents will be reflected, and it will stop any incident that can be. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Cool. All right. So you're probably wondering, well, how do you go from compliance to proactive, or proactive to humanized? So what I want to do now is I want to take you through a model that actually brings communication and safety together. And it's based on 4 pillars. And this is really about really seeing your new role because this is your new role going forward as being that trusted advisor and integrated, because this is what people are expecting from you. They've seen evidence that you've been doing this with all the wonderful communication you've been doing to help protect people from COVID. But now moving forward, people want to see that kind of up a notch. And so this is really seeing yourself as being a focal point to collecting, storing, assessing, and, pulling in best practices and lessons learned and distributing that out to everyone. So you actually want to see yourself as being that of a conductor. So you're bringing in the string section, then the brass section, then the percussion section to really produce this harmonious piece of music that aligns everyone together. So when you think about it from a health and safety or well-being perspective, this is really about bringing in the right messages at the right time, at the right pace for everyone when they need it, to really empower people to do the right thing. And this is really helping your organization continue to have their license to operate. So this model is based on these 4 pillars, as I said just before. And the first pillar, now this is what you've been focusing on for many, many years. It's how to safeguard people. And I should just point out that this is more than just sending out an email. Emails are actually considered low-value types of communication. You want to make sure that you have more interaction and high-touch communication, which are actually events. People love events when they get to learn off each other. I know it's hard during COVID, but webinars is still a great way to get that happening across your organization. But this is really where you are creating meaningful, emotionally resonant information that helps people understand what's in it for me. People don't like it. And this is what they would tell me in the interviews is, don't just shove information down my throat, help me understand why I should care, make me feel like it's my decision to work safely. And really interestingly, a lot of women said that, which I found fascinating. But you want to make sure that this is very strategic. Don't just send out bits and pieces kind of all over the place. Make sure it's connected to your strategy. And what employees are really craving is not just stuff on processes. They want refreshers from time to time. They even want to know how to work at home safely. But what they want is information about how to behave in the right way, because they want to see their peers being more accountable. That's kind of the gap that employees are complaining about. So make sure that you are giving that information as well. And then the next one is server. So you want to make sure that you're really supporting your leaders in how to empower people to work safely. Because of course, there's always that gap between what leaders say and what people do, and people don't trust them. And employers will say, well, we don't believe in the safety culture because leaders aren't doing the right thing. So you need to support leaders in that. And so what leaders say they want is they want summary information that makes it really, really easy for them to understand the things they need to do in about 3 steps. Don't send them stuff they have to click on or long stuff they have to read through. Make it easy for them because they're under so many time pressures. You need to respect that. And at the same time, for those of you in HR, you want to make sure that you're coaching leaders how to, communicate and give feedback and learn from their mistakes so that they can, and even provide programs to help them execute on a program that you might be launching, because don't expect them to be able to work it out themselves. They need support and help with that. And then the next one is Shape Us. So you want to provide real-time, timely information. Now, this is what we've needed during COVID, and this is what people need moving forward. But what a lot of employees say is that they often need safety information to put into a proposal or to put into a business case, or they might be seeing a minister or doing a talk, and so they need certain data. So make sure you have the latest industry trends, particular for your industry with health and safety. Make sure that you have all that information that you can share with people and that they can access. And this also means tapping into real-time stories across your organization. Make sure you have those networks where you can actually find out from people what's going on, what they need, what they are really interested in. It also means tapping into the important information that's happening in the real world. So for example, the Beirut explosion. That was massive, caused so much consternation and angst with people around the world. And people were actually asking, well, how do I know my company's doing the right thing? Really perfect time to leverage that opportunity, get some comms out, a video out with your leaders talking about the risks in your business and what you're doing to mitigate it. Really use that as an opportunity to get the health and safety message through. And then there's Support Us. Now, this message is really about increasing connection and consultation. This is one of the things that employees are really wanting moving forward. They don't want you to just tell them stuff. They want you to have conversations with them. Now, of course, you'll send out stuff and think, why isn't anyone talking to me? No one wants to find out about this new safety thing I've got that I've communicated to them. They don't necessarily want to always talk to you, but they want the opportunity to. They don't like it when they feel like you're just shoving things down their throat. So you want to encourage dialogue. Now, you don't do it by sending emails. You do it by bringing groups of people together, by having committees that you can reach out to find out the latest safety information or stories that people want, or success stories. You do it by helping connect different groups in the business to share best practices. And this is really about, looking after that centralized communication hub that has all the best practices that you can share throughout the business and really connect people to it, because that's what they want. So you're probably wondering now, well, what capabilities do we need for this? So what I want to do now is just take you through a roadmap as to all the different capabilities that you need for all the different cultural stages. And I'll take my little photo off because there's going to be no room for me. So the first one is reactive. Now, for those of you who are in the reactive zone, this is really where, of course, you have to start with the top leadership team. They have to really believe in the value of safety, and they have to trust employees to do the right thing. And this is where you also need to start doing some sort of communication about health and safety. And then you get into the compliance zone. Now, to get out of this zone into proactive, you want to actually move your health and safety team from doing all the comms to actually having internal comms people working with them as well. Now, one of the best practices that I've seen in Petronas that actually amazed me, that I haven't seen in any company, and that is that their internal comms team and their safety department are one and the same. They don't have difficulty getting their messages out and fighting for airtime, because it's just automatic that they're sending at least 2 to 3 weekly messages. That really helps put the jigsaw together of all the different ways that safety works in the business. This is also where you want to start not just sending out emails, but creating other forms of content. So emotionally engaging videos and infographics, memes, having rewards linked to safety, and having events. People love events. You want to have lots of high-touch safety events where you can, and all under the umbrella of your safety brand. You also want to transition to more empathetic and regular communication that doesn't focus so much on prevention that can tune people out, but valuing human life. And you also want to start consultation processes and information sharing. And then to get into proactive, you really want to make sure that you have established management systems and feedback systems to make sure you're finding out from people, how to improve things. I should just point out that, one of the things that we know with safety is that you need continuous improvement. If you want continuous improvement in the business, you need to model it. You have to make sure you're accountable. You have to make sure you're getting feedback and asking people for, how they want safety communication to be. Now, one of the things that was amazing with Petronas is their comms are actually some of the best I've seen in the world. And I've worked with a lot of companies with their health and safety communication. Now, they brought me in because they wanted to be even better. And they got me to, do interviews across the business on how to improve it. And they took that feedback. They didn't get defensive or upset. They relished it. Now, I was amazed at how continuous improvement was just such a part of their DNA across the business. So this really involves having safety and comms people who know how to source best practices across the business, how to uncover and deliver useful stories. How to identify, understand, and segment safety employee messages. Now, if you've got more than 1,000 staff, you've really got to start segmenting your audiences. Please don't be sending out the same message to everyone, because you'll be driving them batty. This is really important. It's a hard thing to do, but this is one of the things that I help organizations with. You also want to change your language from control to care and really consult and connect with others and know how to do that. And importantly, you want to be able to focus on how to change employee mindsets and beliefs in your communication. Now, there's tricks to that. There are things that you can do, and I teach people frameworks on how to do that. You also want to make sure your executives are putting out emotionally compelling and authentic communication on safety. And then to get to humanized, you want to be always producing emotionally resonant communication. So, having frameworks that make it easy to do that. You want to be co-designing multi-pronged strategic safety campaigns. Now, do this quarterly or biannual if you haven't got the time for quarterly, but you want to be co-creating this with those on the front line and those in the leadership team, and also making sure that you're working in partnership with other divisions to integrate safety messages. So often messages get duplicated and people get annoyed by it. You want to have formal processes to consult and coordinate work, coordinate safety across the organization. This is part of that sharing of information as well. And making sure that you are, particularly if you're in comms, you want to be making sure that you're measuring not how much comms you're getting out. That's the old way. You want to be measuring how much behavioral change that you are doing related to your safety program objectives. Because if you don't get that right, what you'll find is that the leadership team and the board will be saying, do people really feel the value of safety? Are people really changing? How do we know? So you need to have measurements that actually prove that to top leaders in the business. So this really is about being that trusted advisor in the organization. And this is such a different value proposition to what you've had to do in the past, but this is what people are crying out for moving forward. And when you really think about how your positioning has changed and how people really value safety now, this is such a wonderful opportunity to actually harness that. And so you want to make sure that you're being more strategic and proactive, and that you're leveraging technology to bring information together and share it out to people, and really supporting leaders with the right tools and frameworks to get their messages out, because that's often one of the gaps that I see in organizations. And one thing that I should just point out that, people are so time poor. They've got so many priorities, and it's so hard, of course, to get our messages out because there's so many other competing messages. But to really get the messages through, it really means honoring and respecting their busy priorities and making it easy for them and giving them summary information. And that's one of the things I see that often gets missed. So just before we go any further, does anyone want to just type into the chat box, what has been their biggest aha going through those models? What's going through your brain? What's sort of shifting for you? Just type in the chat box what's coming up for you. Okay, so I see, Judd, I don't know when you type this in. I think senior leaders need to be ready for it. Otherwise, there could be a mixed message from written message to actual senior leaders' behaviours. Yeah, and this is where HR is really needed to help with the capabilities. And I'm sure a lot of you with your safety programs are doing that in your leadership programs to help with that alignment. Leadership sponsorship is key to adopt. Yeah, you can't do it without leadership. And in fact, if you don't have leadership sponsorship, you're very much going to be stuck in that reactive and compliance-based communication. Thanks, Heather. Brian, the overwhelming importance of leadership commitment. Yeah, it's so true. You know, one of the things that I do as another program is actually how leaders need to build trust with each other, just to shift that. And that came from my work with safety, because if leaders aren't on board, this is such a struggle. So, um, I really feel for any of you who are struggling with that, because that makes it really difficult. And I think that's what's been so lovely doing the work with Patronus, because the leaders are so on board with that. Um, Alistair, you like the analogies. Thank you, Alistair. It's something I've had to learn how to do. Kylie, actually trying to do a lot of this. However, comm strategy and plan would formalize this more with measurement plan. That's a tricky part sometimes. Yeah, and it does take a lot of work. So you've got to have the commitment from everyone to do that. And that's some of the hardest things to do as well. Okay. Oh, Kirsten, working with technology in our comms department will be useful for comms consultation, so we can work with emotionally resonant issues and training leaders. Yeah, you've got to have some sort of leadership training program in place. And usually if you've got a safety program, that is part of the safety program. But it's very hard to get behavioural change without that. So what I want to do now is I just want to take you through my Fast Track Your Safety Communication program to help you kind of tie in all the pieces together. And this program has been developed. There's two parts of it. So there's the core curriculum, which involves 8 master classes, and then there's additional programs that you can do. So the core curriculum is based on my Aura framework. Now, the Aura communication framework is to help you create messages, to help people pay attention, to understand the messages, to remember them, and to take action. Now, this is actually a 2-day. It can be a face-to-face workshop, or it can be 4 half days. It can be done. I did this with 25 internal comms people at Patronus over 4 half days online as a workshop, and it's really about understanding your audience. So one of the issues, if you're finding that people aren't really listening to your messages, sometimes it's because we don't understand our audience very well. And there's work that needs to be done around that. And this is actually the work that needs to be done to make sure that you're segmenting and customizing the messages for people. If you do that, it really improves people actually listening to what you've got to say. And then getting attention is really important. Now, the brain processes information in different ways. You want to make sure that your communication is actually aligned to that, and you're working with people's brains, not against them. And then, of course, you've got to make sure that people understand the message, and it's got to be written in a way that's emotional. We ignore information if it doesn't really hit us emotionally. So there are techniques and frameworks to do that more efficiently. And then there are ways to actually get people to remember the information. That's really important as well. But really critically is you want to help people take action. So I share lots of frameworks to make that really effective and efficient for people to get the behavior change that you need. And then that's part of the core curriculum. And then you can actually select additional curriculums, which can either be standalone or customized or put in part of the core curriculum. And that is, more techniques on how to take action. But really importantly, and this is based on the work that I've done with helping leaders build trust, but also what people are really demanding now due to the pandemic, and that's how to build trust with other departments and to work with them so that you're actually not fighting with them to get messages out, but working with them. And also, connecting safety with others, which is really about creating networks of different groups across the business to really get those safety success stories and sharing information and finding out what people need and getting all that real-time information out. And then really importantly, it's, how do you know what the best practices are? How do you know what the stories are that you need to share with people, that what people want to hear? So there's information and frameworks on how to do that. Now, you're probably wondering, what are the costs for this? So I just want to just share with you how this all works, because it's very much customized per organization, but it's very flexible. So the first component, now this is optional, stakeholder interviews, but, I actually started my career in market research. And what I love about this is that this really finds out what people are wanting from their health and safety communication to get their attention. And if you don't know this, it's very hard to create communication that's actually going to resonate with people. So, this starts at Australian $10,000, but it's very deep and you can do it yourself, but sometimes it's hard when you're stuck in the organizational culture to know to really see the themes and what's going on for people. So this information is really important to actually feed into your communication strategy. For those of you who actually find that hard to do, this will actually give you the information that you need to help to plan communication and events moving forward. And then there are the workshops. So if you do, say, just an online workshop, 90 minutes, it's $1,500. Now, everything includes GST for those in Australia. But if you do, it is an online workshop for up to 25 people, it's $10,000. And then face-to-face, just a little bit more, 2.5 for an hour and a half to 2 hours, to up to 12,000 for, the full-fledged full-day workshop. It can also be one-day workshop if this is a sort of thing that would work for your safety committee as well. And then there's group coaching. Now, I love doing this, and I've been doing this for years with organizations. It's one thing to teach people how to do stuff. It's another thing to get people to do this stuff every day. Even comms professionals do struggle to really shift to creating that emotional communication. So this is about bringing work in, working on a project and sharing it with me. And I coach people as a group, so everyone's learning from each other as to how to improve it to get, to really get those messages and shape your safety culture. So if that's of interest to you, feel free you can message me privately in the chat. So if you go to messages, you can actually just select my name and just send me a direct message with your details, your phone number or email. I'm happy just to make an appointment with you, because I love talking about this stuff and sharing, things that can be done to help your organization. So that's just the main content. What I'll do now is I'll just go into Q&A, because I noticed that there are a couple of questions. Or if you have got a question, and it doesn't even have to be a question, if you have a something that you want to share, if anything has come up for you, if you have a compliment, or if you have an experience that you want to share, just feel free to, you can unmute yourself and just ask, or just type it in the Q&A. And actually, I'll just scroll through the chat. I know there were some questions that were asked at the start, and I'm sorry that I've missed it. How do I convince my Nassim, you said, how do I convince my colleagues that this is key to effective messaging, going from caring to communication? Okay, so that is a good question, and this very much is part of the cultural journey. Sometimes you have to put a business case. If your business doesn't even think that caring is important, and that's kind of a very difficult place to be in, then you have to kind of do it with facts and figures. So putting a case study together. So the slide that I shared that had that data from research studies is something that you can actually use as part of your business case. The one that showed I think it was based on 32,000 people being surveyed across the world, and if they have a caring leader, they're more likely to do the right thing. That sort of thing really starts to help people see the shift, but it can be a difficult place to be if people don't believe that. So good luck with that. Does anyone else have any questions that they want to share? Of course, if you want to just ask me a question privately as well after the session, I know that it can be a little bit daunting sharing stuff with a whole lot of strangers. So happy just to answer any questions if you want to email them to me as well. Okay, well, we are just about at time, and I don't want to take any more of your time if that's if there's no more questions. So thank you very much for showing up today and being here. It says a lot that you really care about this stuff. So thank you for your interaction and your contribution. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and reach out to me. Always love to talk about this stuff with everyone. And it's been great to have you all on board. And thank you, Alistair. Really loved sharing the content with you as well. And it's so good that you're here because I know we worked together many years ago now. So it's good to see you still on board. Thank you, Casey. Yes, sharing lunch. I'm about to have lunch. I'm getting a little bit hungry, I have to say. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your time today. And there will be a copy of the recording. So if you have missed anything or you want to go back and re-listen, you're welcome to do that. Thanks, everyone.